Today my guest is Dr. Gary Chapman.
Your weapon at your side, your arm.
It's not enough to love your children. You have to effectively love your children.
Convictions must be strong. Pierce the darkness with the light as you go along. Living with one foot in heaven, breaking the enemy's power. In the strength of Jesus we can stand in the darkest hour. Living with one foot in heaven, ready when he calls our name. For believers to live is Christ, to die is only gain.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Dr. Gary Chapman. Most of you know him as the author of The 5 Love Languages, which was a New York Times bestseller.
Yes.
And it's, what anniversry is it that we're celebrating?
20th anniversary.
The 20th anniversry.
I'm too young to have a book that's been out 20
I
years.
know.
But
You must have written it when you were 5.
I did.
I have to tell you that book has actually helped me and my daughter and her husband, and it's just a really amazing book, and obviously because so many people have bought it, other people agree.
It's been encouraging. It really has.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the 5 love languages?
You know, I'd been counseling probably for 15 years, and I knew I was hearing the same stories over and over and over. And I knew there was a pattern. People would say, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me. And the other one would say, I don't know what else to do, you know.
Yeah.
And so I went through the notes that I had made when I was counseling people, about 12 years of notes, and asked myself, when someone said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did they want? What were they complaining about? And the answers fell into 5 categories. And I later called them the 5 love languages.
Wow.
So,
And I mean, I've thought about it, and I can't think of any other possibilities.
well, you know, people have told me that there's a 6th love language. Some
And
people
what
say
is that?
chocolate. And I say, well, if they bought it, it's a gift. If
That's
they
right.
made it, it's an act of service.
That's right. And if they ate it, what is it?
If they ate it, I guess it was a gift.
Okay. Wow. Well, you've got the 5 love languages of children also, which
Yes.
is being re-released.
Yes.
And you have a new book, which is a children's picture book, except it's a little bit different from a regular picture book because it has a lot more words, more pages.
Yeah.
But it's called A Perfect Pet for Peyton. And it's a really interesting book to me because it goes through, it's a story, and at the same time it's teaching. And these children all are going to find a perfect pet because are they twins?
It's a birthday. It's twins'
Yeah,
birthday.
Yeah, their birthday celebration. They're going to the Perfect Pet Emporium, and they're going to find the perfect pet. And each of them has a different love language, and they find a pet that is perfect for that love language, which is really an interesting way of teaching children.
Yeah, it's a fascinating way. And we wrote the book really to appeal to children 4 years of age to about 9 or 10 years of age. So it's a tool for parents and grandparents to read the story when they're young. As they get older, they can read it themselves. I had a family say to me the other day, said, you know, since we got that book, they want to read it every night. I said, good.
Children like repetition.
Yeah, and so it helps
Yeah.
the parent teach them the concept that sister has one love language and brother probably has another love language, and we have to learn how to speak each other's love language. So
Yeah.
we're hoping it's going to be a tool to help parents teach children the concept.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful because, like, for example, one child might be constantly trying to help, and the other child doesn't like constantly
Yeah.
being helped. They feel like you're correcting them or something. And if that older child, especially if it's a young one trying to help all the time, would understand that that's the way that child is showing love, I could imagine that would really help their relationship.
Yeah, and also the idea that, well, mom and dad also have a love language. You know, so if I want to love daddy, this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Mother, this is the best way to do it. And of course, you know, as in the book for parents, the 5 love languages of children for parents, we wrote that also to help parents learn how to effectively love the child. Because it's not enough to love your children. You have to effectively love your children. There's a lot of parents who love their children. In fact, almost all parents love their children, but not all children feel loved.
That's true.
And the reason is the parents are sincere and they're doing what they think communicates love to a child, but it may not be connecting emotionally with that child. So you have to learn the primary language of that child and give them heavy doses of that. Then you can sprinkle in the other 4, because we want them to learn how to give and receive love in all 5 languages. That's the objective.
What exactly are the 5 love languages?
Well, we've alluded to some of them, but one of them is words of affirmation, using words to affirm the child. You look nice in that. I appreciate what you did. Ooh, your muscles are strong. Just anything, but you're affirming the child. Then there's gifts. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. And they don't have to be expensive, just gifts. And then there's quality time, giving the child your undivided attention. And you have to go to where they are. Maybe they're on the floor, so you go to the floor and you give them quality time. As they get older, you go to wherever they are. And then there's acts of service, doing something for the child. When they're born, we do everything for them. As they get older, we mend doll dresses, we fix bicycle chains, but we're doing things. We're cooking meals for them.
Right.
And later we're teaching them how to do those things. And then there's physical touch. And we've long known the emotional power of physical touch.
Yes.
So out of those 5, each child has a primary language. And the idea is you give heavy doses of the primary language, you sprinkle in the other 4 so that the child learns how to receive love in all 5 languages and they grow up feeling loved.
Yeah, that's good. Well, when you were talking about the undivided attention, when our daughter was young, about 3 or 4 years, I guess she was about 4 or 5 years old, she would get on my lap, hold my face in her hands like this, and put her nose against my nose to make sure I was listening.
Yes, she was asking for quality time. If you observe children's behavior, you will see they do that. If physical touch is their language, they're always hugging you. If the words of affirmation is their language, they'll tell you, Mommy, you did a good job. Mommy, thank you for this. So observe their behavior. It'll tell you what their love language is.
Definitely. Well, you also have Love Languages Devotional Bible. This is just an excerpt from it. But that is for couples?
It's for couples.
Yes.
It's we use the text of the New Living Bible translation. And then throughout the whole of the scriptures, I drop in devotionals for couples, 5 days a week for a whole year. And then for those who are really aggressive and want to do something on the weekends, I have a little weekend event and some things they can do on the weekend. And it's designed to get couples together in the scriptures. Reading a passage of scripture, reading the devotional, talking about their marriage a bit, and praying together. And most Christian couples at least know that they would like to have a daily devotional time, but they just don't quite get around to doing it.
Yeah.
This, I hope, is going to make it easy for them, because you just walk your way right through the Bible, and every day you know where you're going, and we hope it's going to help couples do that.
How does understanding the 5 love languages help us in passing on our faith heritage to our children and to other people that are in our lives?
Well, I think if children feel loved by the parents, then they're far more open to what the parents are teaching them about spiritual realities. And they're far more likely, as they get toward adulthood, to follow those teachings. But if they did not feel loved, and they grow up with what I call an empty love tank, then when they get to be older teens, they're very likely to turn away from what the parents have taught them spiritually, because they didn't feel loved by the parents. And so I think what this does, it lays a foundation, an emotional foundation, which then helps children consider more seriously what their parents have tried to teach them through the years. The closer that our lifestyle matches what we say we believe, the easier it is for our children to accept what we're teaching. But the greater the divergence between what we teach and the way we live makes it more difficult for the child to believe that what the parents are teaching is really true. So I think this definitely lays a foundation for helping our children accept spiritual realities.
And their perception of what we're doing and how we're showing them all of that is related to the way they experience love.
It is.
Yeah.
I was speaking once at a prison, and all the men in this prison were in there for life. And I said, I'd like to try to explain to you why you either felt loved growing up or did not feel loved growing up. And I explained the 5 love languages and how children have different languages. And when it was over, this young man stood up and said, I want to thank you for coming here, because for the first time in my life, I finally understand that my mother loves me. He said, I realized as you were speaking that my love language is physical touch, but my mother never hugged me. He said the only time I ever remember my mother hugging me was the day I left for prison. He said, but you explained those other love languages. And I realized my mother was speaking acts of service. She was a single mom. She worked full time. She kept food on the table. She kept our clothes clean. Mother was loving me. I just didn't get it. But now I get it. She was loving me all those years.
Wow.
So, you know, even as adults who grew up in homes where we didn't feel loved, if we understand this concept that there are 5 love languages, we can look back and perhaps see that our parents really were loving us even though we didn't feel it. And we can kind of reconnect with our parents even as adults.
And it seems to me that if we understand the 5 love languages, we can start showing the other languages a little more, making a point to do that and learning to do that. I'm assuming that since Jesus is perfect love, he must have known how to do all 5. Is that correct?
Well, you know, I wrote a book actually called God Speaks Your Love Language, in which I went through the Old Testament and the New Testament and just gave illustrations of God speaking all 5 of these languages. You know, we can assume, I think, that anything we discover in social research that has to do with relationships, it's rooted in the nature of God. And we know the Bible says God is love.
That's right.
And God expresses his love in different ways. So the scriptures are very clear that God speaks all of these. And you can look at the life of Jesus on earth and see him speaking all 5 of these languages. So, you know, this book on the children's love languages, I think, also helps parents at the point of discipline. If you wrap your discipline in love, the child's going to get it. For example, let's say you have a rule that we don't throw the ball inside the house. You throw it in the yard, but not inside the house. And if you do, the ball has to go in the trunk of the car for 2 days. And if you break something, you'll have to pay for it out of your allowance, okay? So let's say that little Johnny throws the ball in the house. If you say to, and let's say his love language is words of affirmation. So if you say to him, you know, Johnny, one of the things I really like about you is that you almost always keep the rules. And I really like that about you. But you know you broke the rule this time, and you threw the ball. So you know what has to happen. Give me the ball, and we'll have to pay for the vase you broke. But I really, really appreciate the fact that almost always you obey the rules. Well, little Johnny walks away feeling that was fair. I broke the rule. It was fair. You see, it's when you wrap it in love, and a love that the child understands, they receive the discipline. But let's say you don't wrap it in love. You just say, Johnny, you know you're not supposed to throw the ball in the house. Now give me that ball. I'm going to put it in the trunk of the car, and you're going to pay for this. Well, little Johnny walks away thinking, you know, I try hard to do right, and I mess up one time, and I get clobbered, you know. So I think this is going to help parents also in knowing how best to discipline children so that they receive the discipline.
How would you do it if their love language is gifts?
I'm often asked that question. And one of the points I make in the book, if a child's love language is gifts, it doesn't need to be big gifts. It can be little things. You can give them a candy kiss before you administer the discipline, and give them, you know, a penny after you discipline them. But the idea is that you associate the fact that I love you with the discipline. You know, we've always said, you know, parents used to spank children and say, I'm doing this because I love you. You know? But the kid didn't quite get it. But if you speak the right love language, the kid does get it. You know, this is a part of love.
Right. Well, I think this is a really great concept, and obviously it's going on and on and on, and you're applying it in a lot of different ways. Do you have ideas for how you're going to take it past this?
Well, you know, we've covered the children, we've covered teenagers, the 5 love languages of teenagers. We wrote a book on the 5 love languages singles edition for single adults, and then, as I said, we wrote God Speaks Your Love Language. So, and now with this new devotional Bible
for
couples. I think we've about covered the basis. Now, there was a lady who said, I'd like to write a book with you on the 5 love languages of pets. But I decided I'm going to let her write that.
How about the 5 love languages of retired people?
Well, you know, that's a huge area of retired people. I think these same 5 love languages, of course, apply during the retirement time, but you might have to look for new ways to speak those languages during the retirement years because your pattern has shifted and you're not as comfortable as you were because things have been changed. And I think, but coming back, I think, to discover each other's love language and really focus in on that would still be a positive thing to at least deal with part of the adjustments we have to make when we retire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I really appreciate your being here. Can you tell us where people can find you online?
If they go to 5lovelanguages.com,
Is it spelled out or the number 5?
either way,
Okay.
either way, 5lovelanguages.com, and they can take a free little profile there to determine their own love language.
How fun.
And there's also some teaching information. If you want to teach the book on children to parents, for example, there's some discussion questions you can use in a small group. And obviously you can hear my radio programs and all sorts of things on 5lovelanguages.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being my guest.
Well, thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Good to be with you.